Welcome everybody to episode number 2 of the Bitcoin Yield podcast. I have some legends in the house, and what we're doing here is we're discussing exactly as the name says, which is that store of value for Bitcoin is a locked-in narrative. The next logical thing is putting it to productive use. And so I'm very curious how people, especially across all the spaces, not just retail, but institutions, are thinking about these things. So I got two great guys on, Ed Juline and Tim Kotzman. And I want to discuss overviews in a second, but I want to jump straight into an interesting back and forth we had on LinkedIn, Ed. And Tim, you can give your thoughts as well. But I talked to Jesse Schrader from Amboss, a pretty big Lightning provider, and he made a comment that Suitcoiner's trust in contracts, Bitcoiners trust in code. And that sounds nice, but you were like, there's a lot of people in the kind of like suit space or institutional space that still have the Bitcoin ethos. So let's discuss that. What do you mean when you said that?
Yeah. So, Tim has made the wearing the suit and the orange tie legendary. I have an office that's got an HVAC problem, so I have to have to wear these polos most of the time. But I when I first started showing up at the Bitcoin conferences, it was a mix of just everybody, and you didn't know who was from what world or who had how much Bitcoin or whatever. When I started working for the Bitcoin conference in 23, what I discovered by looking at the attendee list, we had a tool that could back look at their email to see who they were on LinkedIn. I mean, and there were people from Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan and Bank of America that were coming on their Gmail, on their Yahoo, on their whatever. And so they were there, but they weren't part of the circus. And so it was this concept of, okay, how do we bring the enterprise people, the suits, into the Bitcoin world without making it seem like it's a freak show. And so, when I would show up at the technical conferences, the tab confs and the op next or whatever, they'd look at me as kind of like this formal corporate guy and go, what is he doing here? He's not one of us. I'm like, of course I'm one of you. I was coding on computers in the 80s, He's like, this is just a different kind of Bitcoiner. So when, and I wore the PodConf shirt on purpose today, but when PodConf first kind of came up with this Suitcoiner, and then Predator said, no, he did it first, and they're in this little battle over who came up with it first, I interpreted it, a Suitcoiner, as being, hey, that's my identity. I'm a suit or an ex-suit. That's a Bitcoiner. And there's a lot of us out there. You go to Wall Street and there's a lot of Bitcoiners on Wall Street. Talked to a guy at Morgan's, well, I'm not going to say where, but I already did. One of the big financial service institutions, and they have an internal chat group that's just Bitcoiners, but they don't talk about Bitcoin to the outside world. So we're out there, right? And I thought, I kind of took that Suitcoiner. Predator came back and said, nope, a Suitcoiner is someone who's bastardizing, I'm doing my best Predator voice, bastardizing Bitcoin for TradFi means and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's not what I think it is. And then this latest comment about, trusting in contracts, not code. And I'm like, no. So I don't have the full answer other than the way I interpret a Suitcoiner as someone that comes from the suit world that just happens to be a Bitcoiner.
And so do you think is this a false dichotomy then, that like the average Suitcoiner, because I think the pushback is around the ethos, and the Bitcoiners can go like to the far extreme of like living on, a bunker in some, part of the hills and just like transacting from a satellite, which that's extreme. But like when people think about roughly the ethos of Bitcoin, does the average Suitcoiner actually know about these things, or like do you think that's a false dichotomy?
What do you think, Ted?
Think there's a difference between what people, to Ed's point, will say publicly or even around people that they're not super familiar with versus behind closed doors or somewhere where they're more comfortable. And if they do perceive that they have career risk, they feel like they're in a place where they can be more open and not have any negative repercussions. So I think, unfortunately, we're still in that space where a lot of people in TradFi are just, they have families and they have responsibilities, and they can't necessarily walk around with a giant bee on their chest all day quite yet.
I've
Yeah.
I've called myself before. I've never called myself a Bitcoin maximalist. I call myself a Bitcoin inclusionist. Like I'll go to ETH Denver. I want to see what's going on there. What are these people working on? And then people are like, no, you can't ETH and Solana, whatever. I'm like, hey, can you do on Bitcoin what they do on Solana? No. Well, then shut up. Either go build it on Bitcoin. There should be a podcast about that. Build it on Bitcoin. Um, Either go build it on Bitcoin or shut up and let's work together and see what are you building over there and how can we bring you into Bitcoin. Um, yeah, this whole idea of I bring up the analogy of like the NFL. I have a friend that he doesn't even go into the stadium. He sits in the parking lot with his friends and they drink beer and listen to it on the radio. My wife likes to drink a beer and the potato chips and just kind of be a part of it, and they're all NFL fans. If you sit at home and watch it, you're an NFL fan. So to try and define what is a Bitcoiner and who is a Bitcoiner, just stop it, just people who are like, you got to be touching grass and no seed oils. And I'm like, and what? So some guy who's sitting in his basement playing World of Warcraft and eating Hot Pockets, he's not a Bitcoiner? It's like, stop it. There's no need to do that. We're all Bitcoiners. And if I'm a Suitcoiner, that's just because that's where I come from.
Well said. Well said. Speaking on that kind of like they feel it in private, but they can't speak about it publicly. I assume that narrative is changing pretty aggressively, especially as Wall Street gets involved, where people can be, like you could wear the orange tie and not have to like, tuck in your suit a little more. So it's like is the narrative changing pretty aggressively when it comes to being openly about the ethos?
I think all of this is really nuanced. I mean, I had the opportunity to sit in on some analyst and investor and crypto fund meetings at the HC Wainwright event with executives that are running these Bitcoin treasury companies. And it's even there, I thought maybe this is more Bitcoin focused, right? You have, say, we're doing a keynote. And the reality is some of these crypto funds and other investment bankers, they're like, oh, so what's your DAT? Right? They don't call it a Bitcoin treasury company. They call it a digital asset company. They're like, oh, so you only have Bitcoin? Yeah, we only have Bitcoin. And they're taking notes, right? If it's an analyst or someone just try to say, okay, we have a 15-minute meeting. What's your deal? And so it's even the ethos of Bitcoin has not hit Wall Street, right? The digital asset treasury movement has hit Wall Street. And I'm not saying that's wrong, right, or indifferent. I'm focused on Bitcoin, but I think all of it's so nuanced, and it's interesting to see what the different realities are on the.
We for Halloween, our little thing for Halloween is that I move the grill out to the front lawn, and I just make hot dogs, and as the parents come by, they can get hot dogs and wine and beer, and then that way by the time the sun goes down, I'm done for the night. I did my part. And a few years ago, it was just, hey, a neighbor would come by or whatever. And then this last year at Halloween, I must have had like 10 fathers standing at the barbecue with me asking about Bitcoin, because they all know in the neighborhood I'm the Bitcoin guy, right? I must have burned about 40 hot dogs, because it's like, how do you make that many hot dogs and talk about Bitcoin at the same time? And my wife's like, you burned another 40? I'm like, just put them back on. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen this Halloween as I'm standing there. I think I may have to hire someone to do the hot dogs while I, give the Bitcoin talks on the front lawn. Yeah, I've helped a few of my neighbors become very wealthy now, and so the word gets around. So I don't hide it anymore. Just whatever, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve, and I've lost friends over it. People that I knew from like college and stuff, where they were like, "That's a Ponzi, that's a scam," and then they saw what I was doing, and they just got so frustrated that they didn't get it early. It caused dissension between us to the point where we're no longer friends. It's weird. It's just really weird.
Yeah. Well, I like your orange pilling people one hot dog at a time. That's a great story.
Yeah, but you know this, right, Jacob? You don't orange pill someone; they got orange pill themselves.
That's right. That's right.
You just got to figure out the way to get them to want to. I mean, I have this now famous story of a neighbor who did, oh, that's a Ponzi. I said, I don't want to talk about it. I said, oh, what do you like? I don't want to talk about it. And then he calls me. He says, hey, how do I DCA $100,000 a month? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, you talked me into it. I was like, how did I talk you into it? He goes, well, because you made me so mad. I went and watched all these videos and listened to podcasts, and this is the future of money. It's like, that they orange pill themselves. You just got to figure out how to get them to orange pill themselves.
Yep. Okay, so kicking over to you, Tim, because we kind of touched on definitions a little bit. and you touched on DATs, which is that's a term I've heard a little bit, but everyone's talking on Bitcoin treasury companies, and maybe to start before we dive in further, how do we even define a Bitcoin treasury company as it currently stands? Like, where's the edges at? What are we calling a treasury company right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think about a Bitcoin treasury company as one of these couple of dozen that are actively engaging the capital markets and buying more Bitcoin on a very regular basis, whether that's every week or every couple of weeks, but definitely more than once a quarter. When you go to bitcointreasuries.net, not to be confused with bitcointreasuries.media, you'll see a list and there's hundreds, right? Maybe 180 some companies that have Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And so if you just have some Bitcoin on the balance sheet, then maybe that's a different a different title, a different bucket. But I think about a Bitcoin treasury company as a company like Strategy, like Metaplanet, like these others popping up around the world where they're engaging the capital markets to buy more Bitcoin every week, every month. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I think about what is a Bitcoin treasury company right now. And um, it's fast evolving, right? 6 weeks or 6 months from now, one of these companies that are that we know of or a new one will come out with and do a strategy or um, have something that hasn't been done before. So, got just a really exciting time to be covering the space.
100%.
Let me ask you, Jay,
And
who's the biggest Bitcoin treasury company in the world?
strategy, for sure.
No, it's Tesla.
What is it?
Biggest.
So you actually, that was going to be my next question, which is that companies, very large public companies that hold it on the balance sheet, don't seem to fall under your definition that you currently use, Tim. But they would, I could see them being in that space. So like, this is where it's like, where's the line start and stop? So it sounds like there's already there's some difference of definitions here of how cleanly you might draw the lines, but even between you two.
Yeah. We'll just debate this stuff. I just like to poke. I like to say like, well, why? Why are you saying that one is or that one isn't? I tend to agree with Tim that if you're not all in and going for the full hodl strategy, then yeah, that's the purest definition of it. But then what does that mean for GameStop? What does that mean for Tesla? That we should disrespect them, or that if you're not all in, then you don't count? No. So it's it's something we're moving along here as we go. I mean, even the ones that have an underlying business or not. I mean, you got a Bitcoin treasury company that's just buying Bitcoin, getting debt, and there's no underlying business generating any revenue. That scares the hell out of me. But if that underlying business is cosmetics, okay, well, what is? I mean, Strategy's underlying business really has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's this, business intelligence software company. Uh, so doesn't an all-in, full hodl Bitcoin treasury company with an underlying Bitcoin business, is that the only way you can prove yourself as a Bitcoin treasury company? Of course not. But I mean, if Apple says, hey, we bought one Bitcoin, we have Bitcoin on the balance sheet, are they now a Bitcoin treasury company? I don't know. That's why we need more podcasters.
Or podcasters defining what's real, and no, that's very interesting. Yeah, because you could take it to the far extreme of like, if I have an LLC for myself and I start holding Bitcoin, I'm a very small treasury company for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is
But
another story I use a lot is if Saylor had said, we're going to become a diamond treasury company, then what, the employees all have to like now wear diamonds and learn about grading diamonds. And so why should everyone at Strategy then be a Bitcoiner? It's a weird new dynamic that you've got this ethos and this passion behind that is redefining what money is.
interesting. Uh, you mentioned something about fundamentals, where like a lot of these companies are raising largely off of narrative almost, and they kind of have like a flywheel momentum, and that drives more money flowing in to then buy Bitcoin. But some of us are like scared that might be very bubbly and frothy versus a public co buying Bitcoin that has something attached with it they can go into. What does the space look like right now when it comes to that? Which is like, are these companies thinking about fundamentals and trying to make it sustainable, or are they just trying to like glob on to getting capital and buying BTC? What's happening here?
Go ahead, Tim.
Jacob coming with the great questions. I mean, there's been a lot of coverage recently about the MNAVs compressing, or however you want to describe that, right? Basically, stock prices going down. And so I don't think it's going to be too far in the future before you start seeing themes of, well, when you do this, then the market's not rewarding you. If you do this, strategy B, then maybe the market will. And of course, the whole volatility is vitality aspect of, if you are going, Bitcoin is volatile, maybe not as volatile as it used to be, but if you're putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet and your target is to be 2x levered Bitcoin, then that's an extremely volatile stock where you should really be thoughtful about, right? Studying it, understanding it. Uh, what amount of risk, are you wanting to engage in as far as volatility, and a whole other discussion about volatility versus risk and them not being the same thing. But yeah, I think it's so brand new that it's in a way you can think of it as a levered ETF as far as volatility goes, and is that appropriate for everyone? Well, investing is an individual sport, so um, yeah, I think it's really early, and micro caps all the way through companies that should be or could be in the S&P 500. I mean, it's just global and it's all over the map. And so a lot to really put your arms around, from how they're raising money, what the terms are, what the liquidity of the stock is. That's like, you can listen to these things. I feel like I listen to it and people are like, Tim, you should know a lot about this. And I hope I do, but there's so much happening so quickly. To Ed's point, we've had a conversation. Bitcoin's been around for 16 years. There are no experts, right? We're all learning and hopefully all growing and trying to get better every day. But yeah, this is kind of like drinking from a fire hose 2.0. It's not Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin treasuries.
Yeah, and that's the really the main purpose of our event that we're doing on September 17th, which may be before or after you listen to this episode. September 17th in New York City. If you're able to get to the city, come to this event. It's going to be an amazing event where we'll have a small stage in the front of the room. It'll be surrounded by tables and chairs. Three thought leaders will get on stage to discuss a topic such as proof of reserves or yield or MNAV, or what's the future of treasury companies. And then we'll take microphones into the audience. Starts with a sailor keynote, and then we just have 10 beautiful sessions with the top people in the whole treasury space to have an open discussion, like a town hall. If you're not able to get to New York City September 17th, it will be live streamed all over the place. You won't be able to miss it once Sailor retweets it. And if you're listening to this after the 17th, go back and watch the replays. We really don't want to do panels. We don't want to do presentations. We want to do this open discussion so that people can hear all sides and start to wrap their head around this, because it's one thing that we didn't do in the last cycles. We didn't ask these questions about FTX and Tierra Luna and Celsius, and we just all went along with it and said, oh, well, look at all this yield. And there were some people in the corners yelling, and they turned out to be right. But if we can be a part of helping open discussion and discourse about this massive new financial opportunity, then that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, I love the style of that kind of conference. And as Timmy was saying, like, there's so much changing right now that we just need to be in dialogue and like we're all figuring it out. Like we are drinking from the fire hose. And I come from the tech side mostly, so like even people saying Bitcoin, not crypto, but there's this new term called BTC-Fi coming online, and it's not just Bitcoin in the old sense. It's like staking Bitcoin in an LST on Lombard, and now you're accessing 15 chains that you would never have to touch because you're not a crypto user. But if you want to earn yield on it and you know the trust assumptions, that's your call. And in the same way you were kind of talking about it, like there's 17,000 ways to do a treasury company and like market and attract capital, and they're all open for debate on which one is going to be robust. Like it's just too early to know.
Yeah, well, to address the title of the podcast, the Bitcoin Yield, we have some fantastic sponsors that are going to be at our event. We have Babylon, we have Zonaris, we have Salion, companies that are doing Bitcoin Yield products. I think the difference in what you're seeing in Bitcoin Yield now is that the security part is locked down, right? If you put your Bitcoin in, it's locked in on chain, it's multi-sig. They're not out rehypothecating it or sending it over to their girlfriend's company to let her gamble with it. The Bitcoin is safe. The question is more about what is your Bitcoin securing? What is your Bitcoin helping secure? In the case of Babylon, yeah, it's locked up. It's wrapped up in wrap BTC so that generates yield on another altcoin chain. That yield comes back in altcoins that can then be converted back to Bitcoin. You're helping secure these other chains. That's the real debate. But at the same time, I mean, what are the ETFs securing? I mean, an ETF is a negative yield instrument, right? You got to start talking about that. The ETFs are a negative yield instrument. You're losing a percent every year. For what? Well, to secure Wall Street. Okay, great. What is Strategy doing? They're locking up the Bitcoin to secure their shareholders. So anything that's not on chain in your hardware wallet is helping secure something else. Even when it's in your hardware wallet, it's not doing much anyways. The miners will say, hey, we're at 1-2 sats for VByte. We've got a problem here. So the real debate on yield, I don't think, is the security problem. It's more about what is your Bitcoin helping secure? WBTC is securing Ethereum. And is that good for Bitcoin? I don't think so. So there's no yield on Bitcoin. Native Bitcoin on a hardware wallet in your closet, in your safe, it will never get yield. It's not supposed to. It can't. So if you're going to get yield, you're going and playing with some TradFi game that should be secure. We've gotten past that security problem. But who are you helping? I mean, there was a company that takes your Bitcoin, puts it in multi-sig, buys distressed real estate assets, rebuilds them, resells them, and gives you yield. I was like, no way. Not, no, we're not going to help you. Sorry. That's going too far. I made that choice, right? And he was
Yeah.
upset, but I was just like, that's not what Bitcoiners should be looking at for yield. But there's others that I'm like, hey, if you're okay with using your Bitcoin to help other entities, other chains, that's your choice.
Yep. And speaking on that, because yeah, I mean, part of my job at Bitcoin Yield is to kind of like, just like how Bitcoin layers made sense of the L2 space when everyone's saying they're like a, super safe L2, just deploy into this, and then you peek behind the curtain, and it's like there's like two guys holding all this money. This is
Yeah.
a little scary.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yanis and Red did an amazing job with Bitcoin layers, didn't they?
100%, 100%. Like no one wants to do the dirty work of getting in the weeds and trying to figure out, truth from noise,
Well,
but
now you got to get
super
Set.
necessary.
Do you know Jesus, Setzeus? So he
Yeah,
just,
he's the co-founder, yeah,
of what? Of your
of
podcast?
of Bitcoin Yield. He's doing all the engineering side. I'm just the talking head and the research guy.
Well, that makes perfect sense now. Yeah, he just launched BitcoinYield.com, which is going to be a fantastic source for people to go. I can already see people arguing over it, saying, that's not the real yield. This is the real.
Yep.
I'm like, great. Here's a place you can go to think about it, to decide, what's best for your Bitcoin, what's best for your. I mean, is somebody going to get wrecked by going to some crazy yield site? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they deserved it.
Yeah. And as long as you know high rec, high potential reward, like that's your call. There's a big spectrum there. My next question though is like you know the risks going in, hopefully, if I do my job while researching. But how much can these yield company or treasury companies touch these things when it comes to risk management, due diligence, custody? Like can they go on chain and put it into a multi-sig? Do they have to maintain custody? Like how far can they go into the weeds on chain versus their hands are kind of tied behind their back because of like regulations or something?
You got a good answer on this, Tim.
Do if I did, I've lost it. Just, temporarily. It's somewhere in the cloud. I got to download it again.
This is something to find out at the unconference, and maybe we'll have to do a round two and see what people say.
Yeah, you don't find a lot of OGs at these Bitcoin treasury companies, right? Because they typically have this moral stance of like, no, this isn't right for Bitcoin or whatever. But
Mhm.
I think most of these treasury companies are just looking at it as an asset, much like a T-bill or whatever other asset they have on their treasury, and that's kind of the end of it. And so the idea of self-custody or figuring out how to get yield on it or manipulate it, that's just not in the discourse yet. So,
I see.
I think what's his name? Paul Giordino from Mara, right? He takes Mara's Bitcoin and he lends it out to market makers, and they do what they do with it overnight or +2, and he gets back a little bit of yield. And that's about as secure as you can get, because if the market makers were to default on that, Wall Street implodes. So, you know, these market makers need the Bitcoin. They need it overnight. They need it for 2 days. They have to give it back, or the whole thing implodes. He's getting a little bit of yield from Mara. Good for him. Great plan. But he's been crucified before for that, because it's like, no, you got to just hold it and not do anything with it. That's not productive. So I don't
Interesting.
know.
So it's safe to say in September 2025, the average treasury company might be talking to like a 2 prime and doing some stuff with that, but they're not staking on Babylon and doing stuff on chain themselves unless they're really out on the risk curve or like on the frontier.
They are. They are. That's why Babylon and Zonaris and Salian, and that's why they're sponsoring our conference, because there's already treasury companies using them.
Mm.
Right. This comes back to proof of reserves, and I don't think strategy. It'll be a long time before anything like that ever happens. To my best of my knowledge, like Semler and Metaplanet aren't doing that. Tesla's not doing it. So, when you're one of these smaller treasury companies, and it's hard to raise money and it's hard to grow, and you have an opportunity to get 5% yield on your Bitcoin, that's a way to grow your Bitcoin.
Very interesting. All right, starting to bring this to a close. I mean, maybe you don't have a good answer for this because, again, we've talked about the conference is just gonna be a good discussion on these big topics. You're drinking from the fire hose and just like getting completely drenched, trying to figure out which side's up. But where do you guys see kind of breadcrumbs of where you think the treasury space might be going in the next kind of like 2 to 3 years? Do you have any pulse? Maybe you could start, Tim.
Yeah, I think you'll see at some point in the next 6 to 12 months some consolidation if some of these smaller companies cannot get to kind of a point market cap wise where, where they can launch the preferred products. Maybe you'll see a few of them join together so they can get that certain listing on a certain exchange, and they can have a certain market cap so that they can kind of take it to the level that strategy has. Um, I've heard conversations where, and people have said publicly as well, they're looking to kind of build a financial services Bitcoin sort of operating business along with engaging the capital markets. So I think you'll see all of that in the near term. And I think you'll see a lot of things that you haven't seen yet, or at least to Ed's point and your point, Jacob, like the companies that are doing these things, maybe they're not publicizing them. They're not talking about them publicly. Maybe we get to the point where you really need to differentiate, and this is a way through walking the investors through these strategies that they can differentiate. Um, in addition to potentially their operating business that's in, selling yo-yos or whatever they're doing on their core operating business as opposed to their balance sheet.
What about you, Ed?
I don't know. I spend my whole day on pump.fun rugging people. So
Love
I'm
it. Love it.
just kidding.
Cycling back into BTC after you
Yeah.
D10.
Via Fartcoin. I don't know, man. It's so hard to be a profit forward looking in this. I really try to shorten the time horizon on any kind of vision or projections that I give, and I try to get just more people talking and saying, "What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?" There's some thought leaders. There's the Jeff Booths and the Kristen Ragusins who've written these amazing books about when scarcity ends and we're now in an age of abundance. And you read their books, and it's like when you first read a book about the fourth dimension. For a second you get it, and then you're like, no, I don't get it anymore. And then I get it, and we are undergoing such a revolution in what money is and what money means that we keep trying to apply our old models of what money is and how it's supposed to work, and it just doesn't work. Kind of a personal transformation I've undergone in the last couple years is I really like saving now, you know? I mean, I go to the grocery store and I'm looking for the cheaper prices, not because I don't have the money to buy the more expensive stuff, but I enjoy saving, you know? It's like going on a vacation. It's like, hey, let's just do that Airbnb. We don't need the Hyatt Regency. No, I just totally got canceled by Hyatt Regency just then, but oh well. You get to a point where you enjoy saving when I don't think that was true before. It was like you made this much money per year, you saved this much, it went over there, you spent the rest. It puts us into a different mindset. So when you ask like, where's this going a few years from now? It is really hard to get your head around how transformative this is all going to be.
Well said. Yeah, Bitcoin's never been in a better spot, and it's definitely slowly making an impact, and its
I love the
tentacles are
Hyatt
everywhere.
Regency. I love Hyatt Regency. I love your hotels. Damn it.
We can cut this, and I'll just add this in at the end as a blooper. No, this has been great, guys. Thank you for coming on. Any closing thoughts or things you want to impart to the audience as we bring it down?
Wednesday, September 10th, Levon Midtown, Bitcoin Treasuries Unconference NYC with Ed Juline, Tim Kotzman, Adrian Pruitt, Michael Saylor. Be there. You will not want to miss this event. And if you can't make it for whatever reason, the live stream will be available everywhere. It's an event you do not want to miss.
Love it. And for people who want to learn more about what you guys are working on with Bitcoin Treasuries, where should they go?
BitcoinTreasuries.media.
You got
Where
this
is it? It's over
unlocked,
there?
dude.
Over there.
You are a consummate professional, just right on cue with the radio host voice. I love it, man.
Yeah, and then of course you can find the links there to Tim's fantastic podcast. He's got another what would you call it, Tim? It's not a podcast. He's got another thing coming out soon that's going to be really fun. But he's got quite the following on YouTube with the Tim Kotzman podcast. That just fantastic episodes like yours. We're getting to see the cream of the crop rise on the podcast scene.
100%. I think you're also like, you recently crossed 160 episodes or something, so you've been hustling this year.
It's hopefully a good first year.
100%. All right, well, we'll have links to the script, everything mentioned in the description, but Ed and Tim, thank you so much for coming on. Anybody listening, I'll drop some clips beforehand to get the word out about the conference. Very curious to hear more about how it goes after the fact. But yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jacob. Keep up the good work.
All right. Let me stop this.